Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Congressional Neuroscience Caucus briefing. The future of the BRAIN Initiative, sustaining global leadership in neuroscience research after a decade of discovery. I'm Mark Resnick, and I'm a professor of physiology, biophysics, and psychiatry at the University of Illinois College of Medicine in Chicago. I'm also a career research scientist for the Veterans Administration, but most importantly for today, I'm chair of the American Brain Coalition. And it's the American Brain Coalition in partnership with the American Academy of Neurology, the American College of Neuropsychopharmacology, and the Society for Neuroscience. And we're honored to co-host today's Congressional Neuroscience Caucus briefing. So the Congressional Neuroscience Caucus, which is currently co-chaired by Congressman Morgan Luttrell and Congressman Mike Thompson, was established in 2010 with the intent to build awareness of the elemental role that brain research plays in understanding ourselves and our society, and to help communicate the progress and the benefits of this research, promote changes in federal policies to support neuroscience research, and the benefits of that research to those who suffer. Today's discussion is going to highlight the transformative impact of the BRAIN Initiative over the last decade and the importance of sustained federal investment in neuroscience. So to set the stage, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Diane Lipscomb. Now, Diane is a former president of the Society for Neuroscience and currently chairs the SFN Government and Public Affairs Committee. She's also a professor of neuroscience at Brown University, where she directs their Carney Institute for Brain Science. Diane, please.
Thank you, Dr. Resnick. Well, look, I'm incredibly delighted to be talking with you today, and I will be introducing our amazing speakers that are lined up. But first, I just wanted to reiterate how incredibly grateful we are for the longstanding bipartisan support in Congress for scientific and biomedical research, and another call out to the Congressional Neuroscience Caucus. So past federal investments have led to cutting-edge advancements, improving quality of life for individuals experiencing brain disease and conditions, and stimulating the US economy. We in the scientific community understand the tremendous burden that brain diseases and conditions place on millions of Americans. Despite tremendous progress, and some of that we'll talk about in this panel, brain diseases and conditions impose an estimated 1.5 trillion annual cost to the nation's economy, and 1 in 3 Americans will experience a brain or nervous system disorder at some point in their lifetime. In essence, none of us are unaffected by brain diseases. We all know someone, and we all have family members who are impacted. The brain research through advancing innovation neurotechnologies, that's the full name of the BRAIN Initiative. You now understand why we call it the BRAIN Initiative. But this is an interagency partnership. And the partnership should be underscored between the National Institutes of Health and the federal and non-federal research teams. It is revolutionizing our understanding of the human brain and providing researchers with new tools and resources to search for life-saving breakthroughs. To provide an overview of this groundbreaking initiative, I am so honored to introduce Dr. John Nye, who is the director of the NIH Brain Initiative. Dr. Nye.
Thanks so much, Diane, and thank you, Mark. Special thanks to our sponsors, the American Brain Coalition, for organizing this briefing, the Congressional Neuroscience Caucus for their keen interest in finding cures for devastating human brain disorders, and to Congress for their unwavering support of the NIH and the country's biomedical research enterprise. I also want to give a special thanks to one of our panelists today, retired Sergeant Adam Holbrook, and his family for their service and sacrifice to our country, as you'll hear about in a few minutes, also extending to his participation in a groundbreaking clinical trial that we'll learn about later today. Now, just as background, the human brain is responsible for all of our thoughts and emotions. It's what makes us unique as humans and also uniquely different as individuals. It comprises 86 billion neurons or nerve cells, about as many stars as we think exist in the Milky Way galaxy. And together they make hundreds of trillions of connections. The human brain is the most complex organ in our bodies and arguably the most powerful and energy efficient computer known to humankind. But its incredible complexity leaves it vulnerable to disease, as Dr. Lipscomb just said, and yet we lack the tools to understand or treat it. And to put this all in a nutshell of what the Brain Initiative is all about is we cannot fix what we do not understand. And what we're all about here at Brain is to get that understanding so we can start fixing it. Now, as Dr. Lipscomb mentioned, 1 in 3 Americans, or over 100 million humans, is living with a neurological and neuropsychiatric or behavioral disorders, such as Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, epilepsy, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, substance use disorder. The list just goes on and on. So as mentioned, everyone on this call today is either living with or has a loved one or friend or family member living with a brain disorder, and the cures cannot come soon enough. So understanding the inner workings of the human brain and finding new cures for brain disorders is our challenge of our lifetime. And the NIH Brain Initiative is uniquely situated to address this challenge by pursuing 3 complementary strategies. First, we're supporting and developing game-changing technologies and data resources for understanding how the brain works. And these technologies and resources have revolutionized the field. I can't overstate that. It's really changed the way we're doing science, and they're laying the foundation for future cures and bringing them closer, I think, within our lifetime. Number 2, we're changing the way we do science. We're engaging teams with expertise ranging from engineering to the physical sciences, the data sciences, behavioral sciences, the medical sciences. You hear all about that today to create new and innovative solutions to once intractable problems. And then, very importantly, in the subject of today's briefing, we're bringing cures to the clinic today, not tomorrow, today, based on revolutionary neurotechnologies, which we'll hear about. Now, in a bit, we're going to hear about some revolutionary life-saving technologies developed with support from the NIH Brain Initiative for treating severe post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. Now, PTSD, not unlike other conditions like depression, OCD, or substance use disorders, they can have many causes and affect individuals in different ways. They're chronic, yet they can have acute crisis phases, and in many cases, their symptoms can vary in severity. Like our own private thoughts, the manifestations can also be invisible to others, which make them all the more pernicious. Now, with proper diagnosis, many individuals living with these conditions can benefit from available treatments and therapies, but a significant number of individuals cannot. They cannot find any relief, in spite of trying and failing one trial after another in a long string of medications and therapies. And for these individuals, they're literally at the end of their rope. They've exhausted all options. They're unable to live fulfilling lives. Their families are affected. These conditions can and do lead to thoughts of suicide, and in the most severe cases, dying by suicide. Now, among Americans in need of new treatments are our active duty military and our veterans who are exposed to challenging and stressful conditions during training or during deployment abroad in combat theaters, all in service to our country. And here's a sobering fact. In the year 2022, the Veterans Administration reported that over 6,400 veterans died by suicide. And this number is likely an underestimate. So just think about it. That translates to roughly 20 veterans dying by suicide each day, despairing that there is no hope for them. So bringing it back to today's panel and some more positive thoughts, over the last 10 short years, the Brain Initiative has been supporting groundbreaking discoveries and technologies that are finally giving us hope. Our active duty military, our veterans, all Americans, that some treatment, some new life is around the corner. So we'll hear about the technologies to record brain activity in ways we couldn't imagine before, artificial intelligence approaches to interpret these signals to tell us when a person is in a poor mood state, and just as amazingly, to use deep brain stimulation, which is electrical impulses delivered by wires embedded deep inside the brain to quite literally stimulate or zap them into a better, healthier mood state. And the ability to tune or personalize these treatments for each individual's condition. So these advances, which were really science fiction just 10 years ago, are the result of teams of brilliant and dedicated neuroscientists, clinicians, engineers, data scientists, and most importantly, human research participants who work collaboratively with us to solve once intractable problems. And I think you'll see and hear and learn about the brilliance and courage from today's panelists. And with that, I'll pass it back to Dr. Lipscomb. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Nye. And just as you said, we've just got an exceptional panel, and they're going to be sharing their experiences and insights into the impact of the BRAIN Initiative, which was so wonderfully summarized with high points there from Dr. Nye. So we'll be incredibly privileged to hear from a retired veteran alongside two BRAIN Initiative funded scientists, one of whom serves as the principal investigator for the veterans case. I'd first like to turn it over to Dr. Evan Einstein, who's an assistant clinical professor in the Division of Neuromodulation and the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at UCLA in the David Geffen School of Medicine. Dr. Einstein.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm going to give a brief overview of our work and the psychiatry side of things. So as you know, I'm a psychiatrist. And so I work with a wide range of people with various symptoms and illnesses, some who improve dramatically with our first-line treatments, and many who are refractory or don't improve to these treatments. In this light, our research project at the VA and UCLA, with help from the BRAIN Initiative, focuses on folks with post-traumatic stress disorder who have basically exhausted our standards of care and remain severely burdened by their symptoms. PTSD can be absolutely life-altering and even a life-threatening condition, affecting millions of people, including those who have sacrificed for our country. The lifetime prevalence of PTSD in all veterans is over 7%, and that's compared to the prevalence in the general population of around 6%. In deployed veterans, the risk of PTSD is 3 times higher compared to those who are not deployed in the same service era. So examples include Operations Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom. These deployments led to a 29% likelihood overall of developing PTSD some point in the veteran's life. And another example, Desert Storm, led to about 21% likelihood as another example. When these veterans return home, it's as if they're still on the battlefield. They are on edge 24/7, hyper aware of their surroundings, as if they're in danger, even while seated at home on the couch, even when asleep in their beds. If they're able to eventually fall asleep, many experience frequent nightmares that awaken them all throughout the night in a state of perpetual fight or flight. The past blurs with the present. Flashbacks constantly surge into their brain and body, making them feel as if they're suddenly right back in a combat zone, even though they might be at a local grocery store. Sometimes, as psychiatrists, we can improve certain symptoms, anxiety, sleep, even irritability and anger outbursts that come with PTSD. Sertraline, paroxetine, exposure therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, these are all gold standard methods that really can be helpful. But about 40 to 60% of those folks remain significantly affected by ongoing symptoms, eventually becoming frustrated, as you'd imagine, eventually isolating more and more from the world, shrinking away from relationships, unable to venture outside their home, and sometimes even taking their own lives. The whole purpose of our research and other research aimed at understanding the brain and improving mental illness is ultimately to save lives. Anything we can do to help someone feel better and understand how to target their illness more precisely. But that anything is exactly the purpose of funded research, to help those in dire need of relief and survival. They're your friends, they're family members, and maybe even you yourself. In terms of PTSD, it's well understood that the amygdala in the brain is the fear center of the brain. And increased activity in this area, too much activity of the amygdala, is usually associated with the fear state seen in folks with PTSD. But what if we could turn down or interrupt that activity? And that's what our pilot project explores, exactly that idea. We use a device implanted in the brain known as responsive neurostimulation, or RNS, which you'll hear more about, which is currently approved for use today in epilepsy. And in our research, electrodes from the device are implanted deep into the amygdala, and the device then reads the signals from this area of the brain and sends electricity back to the area to interrupt and modulate the activity. So we're in the early stages of this work, on an overall scale, but we've started to see some remarkable life-changing results. Adam, who's here, is our first participant, who I'll let tell the rest of his story, of course, but he's shown significant improvement over time, with his symptoms improving dramatically to the point of being technically in remission from PTSD for several months now. So with that, really thank you so much for your time and having me here, and I'll hand it back to Diane.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Einstein. So now we're going to hear from Dr. Nanthia Suthana, who's the associate professor in the Department of Neurosurgery at the University of California, Los Angeles. Dr. Suthana, please take it away. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. So today I'd like to share with you how the Brain Initiative has enabled our development of new technologies, such as you see here. These technologies have the capability to record from deep brain areas, as you heard Evan mention, but also respond in a way that can intervene with helping patients who have these symptoms. On the left, you see a new technology that can record from single brain cells, while human participants can move freely and behave naturally. On the right, this platform enables long-term recordings from deep brain areas like the amygdala in individuals also engaging in real-world activities such as walking, socializing, and sleeping. These are the first technologies of their kind that can not only record brain activity, but also enable this real-time modulation or intervention of brain function during these behaviors. This provides us with a first-in-human rare window into brain function and opens the door into developing entirely new interventions for patients with debilitating brain disorders. We've been able to integrate these neurotechnologies with peripheral on-body wearable sensors that capture a wide range of physiological and behavioral data in real time. These include high-precision body and eye tracking systems, biometric sensors that can measure respiration, heart rate, and sweating responses, as well as the use of advanced virtual and augmented reality platforms that can simulate real-world experiences with unprecedented realism. This enables us to understand complex brain behavior during natural movement, such that we can develop treatments that actually translate to the real world. In this video here, you can see 4 sites deep within the brain that are recording continuous activity, alongside simultaneously tracked eye movements, gaze position, and body position in the room. This kind of comprehensive multimodal data, for the first time, allows us to investigate how different brain regions coordinate to guide natural behavior, offering us insights into both healthy brain function as well as in neurological disorders. So with the Brain Initiative, we've not only been able to develop these technologies, but use them to make several groundbreaking discoveries, such as, for instance, signals in the brain that can track memory success or failure. Other signals that can track a person's position in a walking experience, which offer deeper insights into how we navigate and remember our environment. Beyond self-representation, we found signals that can predict the position of another person whom an individual is watching, such as they get closer to an environmental boundary or wall, shedding light on how the brain supports social interactions. In clinical applications, we've identified signals that can predict upcoming memory flashbacks or negative symptoms in PTSD, which help inform these interventions to prevent these distressing episodes. And we've shared the technology also with collaborators who've used it to predict compulsive behaviors in patients with obsessive compulsive disorder, offering potential biomarkers for personalized neuromodulation therapies. But now this technology doesn't stop here. As was mentioned, through collaborations, we've begun to use it to treat and help patients with debilitating brain disorders, such as what you'll hear today from Adam, our first patient in the trial, as well as other collaborators who are using it to identify and prevent freezing episodes in Parkinson's disease. As I mentioned, those who are trying to improve compulsive behaviors in patients with OCD, and lastly, patients who have loss of controlled eating episodes and binge eating disorder. Now, this is just a beginning of what I believe is a revolution in neuroscience and medicine that will ultimately help us, change the way that we treat these intractable disorders and enter a new era of brain health where neurological and psychiatric conditions may no longer be life sentences, but treatable challenges. The progress we've been made here so far is remarkable, but it's really only the first step in a journey that I hope will continue through continued investment to transform lives for generations. The kind of work is only made possible through collaboration that the Brain Initiative has enabled us to create a team of neuroscientists, engineers, and clinicians, including neurosurgeons, neurologists, psychiatrists who work together alongside industry partners. And of course, none of it would have been possible without funding. The Brain Initiative actually started the year that I started my lab 10 years ago, and it's been instrumental in enabling all the work that you've heard about today. And as I look into the future, I'm hopeful that continued investment in this kind of research will help us not only for understanding the complexity of the human brain, but for transforming that knowledge into life-changing therapies that can bring real hope to patients. So thank you for listening, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Susanna. I really want to thank both of you, Dr. Einstein and Dr. Susanna, for bringing us into the world of research within brain science, but also really emphasizing that, brain diseases are diseases. The challenge is to understand what's going on within the brain. And I think that you have both really captivated us and really motivated us to really continue this really important research so that individuals who are suffering can get treatment and data-driven therapies. Now I'm going to turn it over to U.S. Army Infantry Platoon Specialist Adam Holbrook to tell his personal story, which I know that you're both motivated by that every single day to bring new cures and treatments. And so Specialist Holbrook, we would love to hear from you. We thank you hugely for being here and being a voice to tell us and give us some insight into your personal story. Thank you so much.
It's an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you. Let's see, where did I want to start? We'll start like 2015, real quick. 2015, I would be out of the military, active duty wise, trying to receive help for mysterious, just like small PTSD episodes. But I didn't think that there were PTSD episodes. I just thought I was having like mood swings or something. So I went to the VA to try and get help for that. Well, we were living in Arizona at that time, and the Phoenix VA at that time was really messed up, and they weren't getting us too much help. So that was a real struggle for a number of years. We would end up leaving California, and we would leaving Arizona and go into California and get back with my old team of doctors who would later figure out that, what I was describing to them, it almost sounded like I was having visions of sorts, or I was being transported where I was on land, on Earth, to another place on Earth where I was in combat. And basically it would be like that's the word I'm looking for, like a rerun of what my deployment would have been. And I didn't think anything of it really for the longest time. I just was like, oh, maybe these are just intrusive thoughts. Maybe these are just, something that everybody else is dealing with, and I just need to suck it up and push forward with it. My docs in California would end up giving me medication. It wouldn't end up helping. I would take a number of therapy classes, ways to ground myself, if you will, which, still kind of works today with other PTSD things. But the big thing is I couldn't explain to everybody that I was seeing stuff because I was afraid everybody's going to think that I was crazy. That was a hard thing to navigate, trying to tell all these doctors, But they started listening, and then a neurosurgeon came into my room one day when we were running tests on my head, and we were trying to figure out what was going on. And he said, we have this new project, which is the brain initiative that we're talking about, and he wanted me to jump on board with that. I was like, sure, why not? I was down for try anything at that point, because so many years had gone by and I had been having so many different problems between suicidal ideation, actually trying to author myself multiple times because I was not able to control what was going on in my own head. I was scared for everybody around me. I was scared for even my service dog, who was protecting me from, everything that was going on. So, yeah, and then all of a sudden we would have the surgery, and I didn't think anything of it for like the first couple of weeks. And then I was like, wait a second, it's been a couple of weeks and I haven't seen anything, because I was religiously seeing things on a weekly basis, episodes from my deployments, combat situations. Some of those situations I would actually be acting out what would happen on the battlefield, or I would freeze, and it would take a little kid kicking me in the shin on a little league field to knock me out of it. That I was staring and I was looking nowhere essentially, but this little kid saw me staring, and I was looking at him, and I said, "You know what? You don't realize what you just did for me." Thanked him and went along coaching the rest of the game. That scared the crap out of me, that it happened around a bunch of little kids. And then that was before we got the test, or not the test, but the actual device put in. So yeah, the device is in, and things are actually crazy. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything in a while. And I've been able to work through a lot of my PTSD symptoms, along with a lot of the psychologists and the therapists, and been able to work through a lot of it now that I'm not seeing all this stuff from my deployments. Yeah, but yeah, now where I'm at, things are pretty good since having the device turned on. I still can't believe that I'm not seeing things, because it was going on for so many years. Count myself as blessed, to be honest with you, with this technology. We're there. It's crazy. We're there with this technology. We can do all sorts of things. All right.
Adam, this is incredible. Your ability to be able to describe, your personal experiences, which sound just completely confusing from day to day, and then this kind of revolutionary change in your ability to navigate the world and to have some level of kind of peace, must have been extraordinary. I wonder if do you mind me just following up with a quick question on this? So, you described a little bit about the technology, but can you give us a little bit more insight into what's it like working with the scientists? I can,
That was actually really
and
the programs that they had set up for us is really fun. We were doing a lot of VR at one point, like we were talking about, and what else were we doing? Everybody of the staff, holy cow! I've never met so many smart people in one room. Holy cow, that's cool. You guys got a really good team there. Like, they know what they're talking about. They know the brain. They know the ins and outs of it. It's absolutely amazing.
It feels like there was like an incredible team of people, scientists, the clinical scientists. And so I'm just wondering, so the real world effects of this research, I mean, I think you've really captured it for us, but it's a team. It's a team of people that really have to come together and be motivated to be able to do
it's a team from like all sides. It's everybody from all walks of life trying to understand what it is that the brain is doing when it gets, I guess, hurt in a way.
Right. Well, thank you. I really, again, want to thank you for your story. You're going to stay and we're going to have question and answer period. I just wanted to say something just a little bit more broadly, but I think a lot of the technology that you have described, Adam and Evan and Nanthia also described in the technical level is really cuts across multiple different areas and multiple different brain disorders, because the methodology to peer inside the brain and to listen to those signals to know, what can be tweaked, it really cuts across multiple different brain disorders. So what you are doing, in terms of, working with the scientists in these really great discoveries, you're helping a huge number of individuals who are suffering from other brain disorders. So thank you for that too. It's incredibly important. So we're going to now move toward a Q&A. And so there's an opportunity to post questions you might have. And as you're doing that, I'm talking to the audience, I'm sorry, to be really clear. But in addition, we'll kick off with a couple of quick questions that I'll ask people about. And so I'm wondering if we can go, maybe back to a broader set of questions. And the first one would be, tell us a bit more, perhaps starting with Dr. Nye, about the promising recent breakthroughs from the Brain Initiative. And how they might translate into clinical applications. We've heard one incredible example. Are there others that you would like to highlight?
Right, this is great, and thank you, Adam, for your service and for participating. As mentioned, I'll just say that this was a team effort, and you have been a critical member of this team. We would not know how to direct our resources if we did not know exactly what you were living with and what your needs were. And part of the huge success here, not just in this project, but across the board, is bringing together with different backgrounds and expertise. So I learned at some point, probably a little bit late in my own academic career, that engineers love to fix things. They love to build things to create solutions for big problems. And there's no bigger problem than the human brain. So one of the challenges is to understand how it works. So one thing we're doing is we're bringing together biologists, molecular biologists, data scientists, engineers, people that know how to pull out more information to really get a better understanding of what is it that comprises this amazing computer. What are the parts? How do they wire together? We have these very large projects, that we call a cell atlas project, connectivity or wiring diagram project, again, to understand this thing that we need to fix. And this really been a tremendous effort that truly has changed the way all neuroscientists look at how this marvelous machine works. But on the back end, we also have incredible engineers like Dr. Suthana working together with psychiatrists and clinicians like Dr. Einstein, who are now taking that knowledge and putting it to good use. And as Dr. Suthana, noted, we're now applying these deep brain stimulation, what we call neuromodulation technologies, not just to PTSD, but to OC, to severe obsessive compulsive disorder, treatment-resistant depression, binge eating disorder, substance use disorder, huge public health crisis and burden on our society, and also, unfortunately, affecting our active duty military and veterans. So it's really cutting across all domains. And what makes the Brain Initiative here unique is they're not focused on just one disease. We're providing foundational resources to understand how the brain works. There's a commonality. It's what's between our ears, and also a commonality in terms of how to apply this technology. So we're not just applying one-off technologies. We're always focused on getting to the point where it can be distributed and disseminated and hopefully democratized across the board. So this is something very exciting. As you might all appreciate, Adam was one of the first 2 patients in the trial we just talked about. This is great. We've learned so much from this, and the individuals have benefited from it. But what we need to do now is to scale this up. And that's going to require time, resources, a will to do that. I don't think we can realistically implant these electrodes into millions of Americans, but I think we can find new ways of developing what we call non-invasive or minimally invasive technologies. And this is going to be the future. I personally feel very passionately that we have the knowledge and ability to change the world right now, and it's therefore our responsibility to carry through on that. So I'll leave it at there. Leave it at that. I know our other panelists have a lot to say about the topic as well.
Yeah, do others want to jump in on this question topic?
I guess just to add that, because of the Brain Initiative, we've been able to assemble this large group of team, these smart scientists or smart people, as Adam referred to them as. And because this team is now developed, as John said, can now expand very quickly with, sort of on lesser, more efficiently. And so it would be a shame to really break up, that momentum. And so I'm hoping that can, continue to, investment can really just launch this program into a larger venue and really, provide a lot more help to a lot more people.
The other thing that strikes me, is that there's also has to be a lot of trust built within a team. And there's obvious analogies there, Adam, to service. There is no way to be able to tackle an immense problem with any individual, but there has to be an integration of expertise and a lot of trust in the people that you're working with. And so that takes time. But then when it's ringing, I mean, when that's working, you just have to go, right? You really want to take advantage of those years of building trust, building expertise, integrating that information. And I think that's been the extraordinary thing about the Brain Initiative, which has given people the time to build those teams, to build that expertise, and then to really dig into incredibly difficult and challenging problems around brain disorders and diseases. But I feel like, your team that you've just described, Evan and Nanthia, it feels like it's just there, right? The ability to be able to help individuals like Adam just feels like it's at that moment, and you just got to keep going, and then really amplifying what you've been doing. So thank you, all for that. There's some questions coming in, and I wonder if, Adam, do you mind if we turn back to you? Because I think, honestly, it's so important to hear from you, in terms of your experience. And just, wondering, can you give us a little bit more insight into the way in which your life has changed? The before and after, and you touched on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then perhaps a little bit, I don't want to bundle these questions, but so interesting to hear from you. And then a bit about, what was it like working with the scientists and the team? So a little bit of before and after, if that's okay, if you can. If it's fair to describe that, it felt like you were really saying that to us once you had the stimulation, your world changed. Yeah. And then a little bit about your experience with the team.
Yeah, definitely. So let's see.
And I think, Adam, if the questions also relate to your family, how your family may have been affected by this.
Yeah, we can talk about that. They hated me for a long time, guys. Like, they wanted nothing to do with me. They were afraid to go to Disneyland with me. We tried going to Disneyland with my service dog and with just like a small group of people. Bad idea. I ended up having 2 episodes, both of these seizures that I was having. And my body was mimicking seizures when I was having these PTSD episodes. So that was like a big problem, and it was making quite the scene at Disneyland. So they scooted me out of there on a stretcher, and I came to in the hospital with handcuffs on my wrist and them telling me that I'm in a psych ward. It was really awkward. So yeah, things were really difficult for my family through the whole process of me, especially when I got out. They didn't know what to think of me. And then my family just kept getting bigger, and we kept trying to grow together. And then we were moving everywhere. We were trying to find some common ground for both of us to live while I'm dealing with all this stuff going on. And then my wife's trying to help me navigate it all, and she doesn't know how to do it. So, and she's an intelligent woman with a psychiatry background. And she even was looking at me like, I don't know what to do. Like, what's going on? And then, we met the neurosurgeon, at Loma Linda, and yeah, we got the machine, we got the little device put in. It's not very big actually. It's real tiny too. Don't really notice it. Um, I was actually really surprised it was that small. I was expecting something like gnarly, like Elon's like plug that he puts in people's heads, but this thing was really tiny and compact. And um, how has it changed my life afterwards?
Did you go to Disneyland after, Adam?
Yeah, I
After
would
the
go to
implant?
after the fact. It went relatively well. I just didn't have a service dog at that time. Um, but we made it through half of the day at Disneyland, and then it just got really crazy, and I couldn't handle it anymore. However, since that time, I have not been back. Disneyland is just too sticking expensive nowadays.
Adam, was the effect question about like, was the effect immediate? I mean, and maybe Evan, you could also say something about, the length of the treatment, and the outcome and the time course of that.
Yeah, we're learning more as we get more participants, of course, and it's a very time-intensive follow-up process for everyone involved. And what we've learned is that, like other neuromodulation technologies, it seems to be not only helping in the moment. And Adam, I remember us, talking about uh, fireworks being challenging at Disneyland, but when you went back after the implant, there's an example of the momentary benefit of the device stimulating, where you had some anxiety, but you felt like this washing sensation over you as if it interrupted having a worse episode. And we could talk about that too, but then the sort of longer term effects are really tapping into what most neuromodulation technologies are tapping into, which is called plasticity, which is the brain's ability to make changes. There's a the neuroscience behind whether the brain can make new cells or not. It's a complicated topic. Most of the brain cannot make new cells. Let's just say that, if not all. But the brain has this really interesting ability to wire together and then change connections. And if over time you modulate that activity and the connections, they can change over time, influencing thoughts, emotions, feelings, and how you perceive the world, and also how you interact with people and the world. So what we're seeing over time on a longer term scale, Adam's been over 3 years since his implant. And it really seems to be over time continuing to improve. And that's probably due to the brain's changing and increasing propensity to make changes in those circuits. Yeah, I don't know if you want to, I don't know if we want to talk more about the fireworks or anything like that, but Adam, but
Yeah, fireworks. I still can't deal with fireworks for the most part. Um, but there's I don't know. I'm doing better now that I'm not seeing anything after the fact that we turned on the device. But like I said, I still have like PTSD symptoms that pop up periodically, but the severity of those things that as they've popped up has been way less. So, like Dr. Einstein said, it's been a slow progress to get there. And like I said, it took about 3 weeks for me to be like, all right, I think this thing's working maybe. And then a couple months went by, and then I was like, okay, I'm not seeing anything. So this technology is doing something. So I'm grateful for it.
there was also a question that I saw come up about medications and changing medications over the course of having the implant. I think oftentimes with research projects, but also uh, adjunct therapies and other neuromodulation that's already FDA approved, it's important that the goal is not necessarily, sometimes the goal can be a personal goal to get off medications, especially if they're causing side effects or anything like that. But sometimes when you start making plastic changes in the brain and the circuits start changing, sometimes even medications can be more helpful, or different medications can be more helpful in different ways. So I don't know if what your experience with changing your medications was, Adam, during the course of over the last 3 years with the stimulation as well.
They've increased on some things and they've cut back on a lot of other things over the years. It's been turned on. But yeah, it had to be adjusted because things were going in our favor essentially. So
I'm wondering, thank you. That was great and really insightful again. I'm wondering, Dr. Susanna, about a number of people are asking about access, to this technology, and then also thinking about where you're thinking about the future in terms of, improvement of devices, from invasive to non-invasive, and yeah, if you don't mind kicking off answers to that, I'm sure that others will jump in.
Sure, yeah, I was going to type when I see a question.
Okay, great.
I do believe that non-invasive methods could be promising. However, in this case, where there's a highly episodic nature to the symptoms, in these um, what Adam was describing, the ability to directly intervene at that moment makes these, devices that are implanted potentially more optimal. Also, we are intervening at a very deep brain structure in Adam's case, the amygdala and the hippocampus, which is not reachable by these non-invasive methods currently. However, future developments or improvements on that, obviously taking away the risks of surgery would be beneficial. I also think there's a very sort of personalization approach that's needed for each patient that hopefully future developments can help us, gain the ability to tailor this more appropriately. The first device I mentioned, the Neurostack, can really personalize in a more advanced way, so that could be used in the future to, let's say, for patients that may have, variable neural activity that doesn't look exactly like what we would expect. We can, tweak it a little bit so that it could benefit them when they need it, and use these more advanced technologies, that I spoke about in the beginning.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, I mean, this is just a great example of how, as this the pace of discovery technology, it's not standing still. I mean, we're leapfrogging from one big win to another. And again, I can't stress for you enough that people here enough. 10 years ago, the idea of using neuromodulation, deep brain stimulation to treat the symptoms of PTSD, depression, what have you, to me was just so far-fetched. I almost didn't pay attention to it. This is 10 years ago. And here we are 10 years later. I mean, if you look at the window of time it normally takes for a basic discovery to go toward an effective therapy in the usual pharmacology drug industry, it's about 20 years in a best case scenario. And here, just 10 years of actually as robust as the funding has been to date to the Brain Initiative, it's a very, very small percentage of the overall investment that the U.S. is making in neuroscience. And with that highly leveraged investment, we're seeing, oh my gosh, just new ways of treating intractable conditions in less than 10 years. So this is, to me, truly amazing. And as we're hearing from Nanthia's work, we're not stopping on this. We're getting better at it. We're getting more information. We're developing better tools, technologies. We'll be able to miniaturize these things to really be able to get to the point where, as I said, we have to be able to do this in a less invasive, less costly, less burdensome way. And I believe we can do it. If we look at the pace of discovery, it's just going faster and faster. There's been an acceleration because of these breakthroughs. So to me, as a scientist, it's been, to me, jaw-dropping. From the human aspect, I think, as I said, I think we really do have real hope now. It's not false hope at all.
And I also just want to mention, like, the magnitude of resources that are required for this. It's not trivial. And so non-NIH or non-Brain Initiative funding really would not enable this to happen. And so pretty much all of it was funded by the Brain Initiative with a substantial a series of funding, grants. And if that's taken away, it would be very, very difficult to sustain on private contributions. There was a question I was answering. That what I saw about that.
Yeah. Evan, do you have anything to?
Well, I'd like to say from the clinical side, over, I mean, since psychiatry has existed, there have been challenges with, yeah, I mean, if you go so far back, there's been mistakes made and things like that. Anybody in modern psychiatry, will tell you our focus is, of course, ethical treatment and getting people better. But the point is that without the brain is the most mysterious organ. I mean, it's hard to argue against that. Where cardiology is in terms of psychiatry and neurology, probably 50, 60 years behind, who knows? But the point is that we have medications that work for many people, that work for some. There's always been doubt of what works, what doesn't, from different public perceptions, different political perceptions. The importance is, if we want to keep finding ways to help the people that aren't being helped by the standards of care, there is no way to do that without this research and this funding. I mean, I reckon, I can't speak for every psychiatrist, but a modern psychiatrist would tell you that we want to be able to help in any way possible with, partnering with folks and patients and figuring out what is the most helpful thing. But we are limited in our tools. And the only way to expand our tools is to learn new things, not only about the brain with basic sciences, but using new treatment technologies to learn about the brain, but also to learn how it can help folks who are severely debilitated by these illnesses.
Thank you. And, John touched on this a little bit, but I'm wondering, there's a number of questions about, what other diseases and disorders, and someone mentioned Parkinson's disease. And of course, there's a phenomenal history of deep brain stimulation in Parkinson's disease. And I wonder if someone could pick that up rather quickly, but give some context to the ability for this technology to have really broad sweeping impact.
Yeah, so I'll jump in real quickly and then turn it over to the true expert. So we have failed to mention that deep brain stimulation has been around for, I think, over 2 decades now, and been used to treat the motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease, to control tremors and problems with gait and what have you. It's the bedrock of all that we do. It's a gold standard for treating these symptoms in individuals living with Parkinson's. And I know I have close friends who are benefiting from that as I speak today. All brain disorders are complex, but as far as all these go, it's much less complex than what we're talking about here, these behavioral and mood disorders. And so it's been used broadly, and this is building on existing technologies and applying it in ways that, again, 10 years ago was, to me and to many of us, unimaginable. And it's come about because of our better understanding of neural circuits, what's involved in these conditions, and actually understanding them well enough to be able to start intervening. And not to say that treatment of Parkinson's symptoms is solved. Absolutely not. We have a long way to go. We haven't yet figured out how to stop the progression of the disease. But for those of folks living with Parkinson's, actually brain-funded investigators are finding better ways of applying it. So we heard from Dr. Sutana that we now have ways of actually doing this in a so-called closed loop system with the RNS stimulator. We would actually read out brain activity to be able to predict when, for example, Adam or somebody like Adam actually is about to enter an episode, and to prevent that from happening. And similar studies are being applied also in Parkinson's disease and other disorders to be able to fine tune it, because as we know, as most of us might appreciate, every treatment, every drug, whatever we do, always has some unintended side effect, in addition to providing good. And we're using what we're learning here at every step of the way. And we have a consortium of investigators who are using neuromodulation, not just in Parkinson's, but across all these conditions, that are sharing their know-how. We've turned a group of highly competitive individuals into collaborators, because they realize that we can move the field much further if they go together. So in Parkinson's, we're improving that as well, but it's actually all these improvements are being applied to the good across the board. And maybe Nante, you can
Yeah.
talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, the major difference between
I
the
just
older
wanted to say,
technology.
sorry, Nathaniel, I just wanted to say we're at
Almost.
like 66 minutes.
1 minute.
Maybe,
1 minute.
like, if you can do that and then
Yeah.
maybe just have some closing
Wrap it
remarks
up.
at the same time, it would be amazing.
Sure. Yeah, just to
go
say
around. Go ahead.
that the devices we have now give us a huge advantage over the ones that have been treating Parkinson's for decades because they can read out activity continuously. We're getting data from Adam every day for the last 3 years plus. And so in essence, you know, he's like sort of the first man on the moon, so to speak, like a pioneer, which is giving us data to learn so much about the brain that we've never been able to do before. And that's happening in Parkinson's as well, because not every treatment is working for every patient, and we need this information to tailor it. So that's all I say.
And that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Really like that. Any quick few seconds closing remarks
Closing remarks, you know, I just want to express a huge amount of gratitude for the Brain Initiative. My lab didn't exist 10 years ago, and the Brain Initiative created it, essentially, right? It would not be here today without it. My lab is exactly the same age as the Brain Initiative. You call me a Brain Initiative baby. But, you know, I'm really hopeful that this kind of work and investment continue. And so I'm just, you know, of course, as everyone is, nervous that we've gained all this momentum. We're sort of headed to the moon and beyond, and that we don't just stop there, and that we keep going with this.
Thank you. Evan?
Yeah, again, thank you so much for having me today and the opportunity to speak. And I just want to leave thematically with we've got to keep moving forward and not backward or being stagnant. I mean, everyone knows someone who's struggling with a mental illness or neurologic condition, and this research funds the ability, or the Brain Initiative funds the ability to pursue research and push forward and find new treatments and help all our family and friends and ourselves. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Mark, did you want to take a quick? You're on mute, Mark.
Very quickly, from the advocacy perspective, I wanted to remind our audience that this is an investment. It's not an expense. And the tools that are created are often spun off into the private sector, so that this is a partnership. And it is critical that public funds be used to perpetuate the extraordinary accomplishments that Brain has already wrought.
Thank you so much. And then I'm just going to turn, Adam, we have just like 1 or 2 seconds. I'd love for you to just say a quick word here. We are all so incredibly grateful to you.
Well, thanks for having me on. And no joke, thanks for having the technology and the will and the know-how to even come close to doing something like this. I didn't know we even had this technology, that we were even remotely close. I mean, this is huge. It needs to be shared. And I tell people all the time, when I tell them my story, they just look at me like I'm crazy most of the time. But then they see that, you know, I have this thing up here and they get excited and they're like, oh, cool, we're there. I'm like, yeah, of course we're there. So
thank you so much. John, I'll give you a couple of seconds and I'm going to do some closing remarks and then we're done.
Thank you. I hope everybody here can see what this is all about, bringing together the most brilliant and courageous folks to approach the most vexing problems facing society today, some of the most vexing problems. And rest assured that the Brain Initiative, we're being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. We appreciate and we will invest every last penny into making sure we can advance the cause. And we take this very, very seriously. And we're just hoping we can continue to fight the good fight here.
Thank you, John. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I would just say a few things, very few seconds to close out. Enormous gratitude to Adam, of course, for your service and for being that pioneer in new technology. And thank you for telling your story. Deep, deep appreciation to the Congressional Neuroscience Caucus for the ongoing leadership and the support of the Brain Initiative. And I hope that you all really appreciate. This is a passion, and this is what we're all about. The team is together now. The 10 years of the Brain Initiative has been transformative. We can't stop now. We need more funding. We need to reinvest in the Brain Initiative. It is absolutely critical. Otherwise, all of this unbelievable progress will be lost. I just want to really reiterate what we've said, that this is not just about a single disorder or a couple. This is across the board ways to be able to interrogate the brain, to understand it, to have biomarkers. Just in the same way that cancer, identify the biomarkers and then you have a way in to do treatment. The brain is wondrous, it's complex, but it just is going to take scientific research through NIH funding, through the Brain Initiative, to really build and increase the number of breakthroughs, to advance our understanding, to lead more cures and treatments. And we are calling on Congress to provide the maximum possible resources to the Brain Initiative for innovative neuroscience research, which will lead to much needed groundbreaking discoveries. Thank you all.